Today we're going to go over a video on how to install a new water pump, thermostat, and alternator on your Honda Accord. Had this happen to me a few weeks ago. Basically driving home, get to check the charging system light that comes on here. That means that your alternator is having a fault. So first thing you need to do is check your battery after seeing something like this. The car is relatively undrivable when this happens. You either get, fluctuating power or no power at all. So first thing you want to do is pull a multimeter on there. As you can see, with the car shut off, it's pulling 11.8 volts. That's not enough. So now I'm going to go ahead and start replacing the alternator. I've taken off the negative ground. I've gone ahead and removed some of the connectors here. I'm going one by one, starting at the top. They have a bolt there, wire connector on the actual alternator, and then below it, it connects to the AC compressor. I believe that was a 12 millimeter. I apologize. Just before that, it had a list of tools. If you need to see a longer version of that, go ahead and just pause it there and take a look at all the different tools I used doing this. Next thing I'm doing here is taking the belt off taking the dry belt off. And if you need to watch a video about the tensioner, I also have one available. I'll try to link it here so that you can go and see more in depth how to get that off. But I'm just basically showing you where the tensioner is, how to take tension off of it. And there's a new alternator, new used. I actually bought a used one just because they're so expensive. Decided to just pull one off a car that had 5,000 miles on it. Seemed like a better deal. It was only about 80 bucks. So now I'm just kind of getting an eyeball what's going on inside here. I'm trying to show you where the different connectors were. There's one down there. That's an AC compressor. Then there's a connector there you have to unhook. And then a wire connector there. Another harness connector, and then obviously the bolt where it connects. I always put that bolt back on just so it doesn't get lost, and then you basically want to flex that wiring out of the way when you're done. That's a top bolt, and then the bottom bolt is hard to see. I think I get a better angle here. Yeah, see there, it's towards the bottom there. The problem is that tensioner is in the way, so the tensioner has to come out in order for you to get to it, which kind of sucks. I was hoping that I could get to it without removing the tensioner, but it looks like I'm going to have to. So that's going to add quite a bit more time. Let's see. There we are. Oh, wait. Did I need to take that? Maybe I didn't. I thought I did. I guess you could get to it without taking. I thought you had to take that off. No, I think I had to. So I'm going to go ahead and undo this. There's a bolt that's actually backed in and held in there on the back. I sped up as much as I could here so you guys don't have to sit here and watch nothing for too long. And then got the bottom one with that 2-inch extension. Try out different extensions, see what works best for you. Sometimes something that works for me won't work for you. Okay, now I'm going to try to do this one-handed, which is not a good idea. I'll figure that out pretty quick. You can use like a pry bar or whatever to break it loose, but two hands work better than one trying to hold the camera at the same time. Because you can see that's locked on there pretty good, and I was able to get it off. See, I think I already took the tensioner off. So I have to try to remember this. This was shot a few weeks ago. Yeah, I had already taken the tensioner off. So I had to take the tensioner off in order to access that bolt to the alternator. Like I said, I'll link that video so you can take a look. Now I see that my water pump's right there, and I would have to take this all apart anyways. At this point, I'm deciding that maybe I just need to replace that water pump. I have almost 80,000 miles in the car. The pump's not leaking or anything, but having this all apart seems really stupid not to go ahead and replace that, which obviously is going to be more work. Here's your OEM parts. They're almost the same price as the aftermarket, so you might as well buy the better Honda parts. I got 180,000 out of the first one, so I decided probably best to stick with what works. So I also used Honda antifreeze, the same thing. One of my buddies is a Honda mechanic. He even told me, he's like, "Did you ever have a problem with it in the 180,000 miles?" I said, "No." Well, he goes, "Maybe you should keep using the same fluid then." And that actually makes a lot of sense. So now that I'm going to do this, I need to jack the car up. I have to take the splash guard off the inside there. So here I am taking the wheel off. Yep, super fancy. Lose a bolt. Got to go get it back. I really like these Milwaukee impacts. It's great. It's replaced my air tools completely. Alright, so you have to remove a couple of these clips from the inner well here. That one is really a nightmare. I know I just need to buy the pliers to remove those clips, but I just haven't. And as you can see, I'm going to sit here and struggle trying to get to this one because it's up and out of the way, which means you have to go under the car. I never like going under the rotor like that because it just feels like uh, Final Destination. The car's going to fall on your head or something. But you put the wheel under the side of the car, so if it falls, it smashes the wheel instead of your head. Okay, so you just want to bend that out of the way. You can take it all the way out if you want extra credit, but you really don't need to. Okay, so I'm going to look up here. There's the main drive pulley right there. And then you look just a little farther north, and you have the water pump. The water pump bolts pass through those little holes there. They are not easy to get out or put back in, so you'll need some dexterity. Get your fingers in there to get them in and out. I used a little magnet to try to, when I needed to put them back in, to guide them back into the holes, because it really isn't used. It's a really tight space down at the bottom. The top ones are not hard at all. They're just, right there, so they're not too bad. But those ones that are actually behind the pulley are a little bit more of a pain in the rear end. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and drain the radiator. So I'm going to take the radiator cap off, open the reservoir, and open the drain cock on the actual radiator, which is right there, right in the open, which is really nice. And I appreciate Honda doing that. And it can just open it with your hand. You don't need a tool. And go ahead and just drain the system out. It makes life a lot easier. And you just let it drain for 10 minutes or so everything gets out of there. Make sure the cap is off of it so it has air can fill up the back. And I'm going to go ahead and remove the reservoir. I actually bought a replacement hose for this just because it's up there on the top, and it had a little bit of rub on it, so I might as well replace it. It was like $3. And go ahead and dump out this fluid, which is, Honda fluid. Antifreeze has a weird look to it. It's that blue-greenish tinge. Okay, so now it's finished draining out. I'll go ahead and tighten that back up. You just need a finger tight. All right, now I'm going to sit here and struggle while holding the camera and trying to remove the bolts at the same time because I am a one-man wrecking crew. Okay, so the camera's now steadied here. And we're going to high speed through the bolts coming out. As you can see, it's just loosen them up and take them out. I think I'm using a 1/4-inch socket wrench right there with an extension on it. Or not extension, but a deep well socket. Use whatever works. There's no super right or super wrong tool. It's whatever your hands feel best with. I mean, sometimes people are fine just using a regular size. Sometimes they need a smaller one. Depends on how big your hands are. I have large hands, so this is much easier for me. Okay, now I'm working from the bottom to get those bottom bolts out, which are not easy. And just working around. You can see the pulley moving around. I'm just trying to get all of them out. This wasn't too bad. Getting them back in was more of a pain in the neck than getting them off. It's putting them back in and getting the holes lined up, because they're long bolts, as you can see. So it's not like, just slide it in there. They awkwardly go in there. There's a new pump. It comes with the seal already installed, so you don't have to do that part, which is nice. I don't know why more of them don't come like that. Okay, so now we need to get that off of there. I tried just giving it a little yank, but that's not going to do it. So it's probably better to give it just a little tap. Nothing hard. This is all aluminum. You don't want to smack this any harder than you have to. So once it cracks loose like that, go ahead and just let it drain out to your pan below. Once that's finished, you just pop it off. It's actually quite easy. So I'm just going to take a look at it. Everything looks good. Never leaked. It was a great pump. So I'm very happy to go ahead and use the same thing again. At this point, I'm just going to rinse it off and just get any residual antifreeze off the area, because that stuff can be sticky and get dirt stuck to inside the engine bay there, and I don't like that. And then let it just dry. Now you want to, at this point, compare your parts. Make sure you're not putting something different on your car than what was already on there. It's always good to just double check, because you never know. Stainless steel impeller, they really survived. So I hope that you get another 180,000 miles out of the next one. Okay, so now installing the new one. Same way the old one came out. Just want to hand tighten this. You don't want to. You want to just go around in a circle and basically just keep tightening them a little bit at a time until it's on there, and then at that point you can pull your torque wrench out and put the final torque on it, which I believe was 12 foot-pounds. It could have been less. If that's less, I'm going to pop it up here on the screen after. Like I said, this was a few weeks ago. So what I ended up having to do was use a magnet to try to coax those bolts back into the hole. And when I was done, I used my little, where did I have that set? Geez, that reflection's really gnarly. And you can see how I had that set up, but I think it was 12 foot-pounds. I'll check. This obviously was inch-pounds on that because that's a very small torque wrench. All right, so that got all tightened up. Now I'm going to go ahead and pull the hoses. And I kind of goofed it here. I didn't damage anything, but you got to be really careful because these radiators are plastic. And see how I got really far in there? That was just not a good idea because as soon as I squeezed that, I heard a little bit of crunching sound. It didn't damage it, but God, I could have really ended up with more to do if I would have damaged that. So I'm taking a look at it to make sure I didn't crunch it, but it thankfully was fine. I used a utility knife instead to cut it. Be even careful with that because if you don't want to, you just want to get through the surface of it so it can release. You don't need to cut really deep. You just want to be gentle and then be able to release it because after that kind of mileage, obviously it's really stuck on there. You want to clean the mating surfaces and everything like that. The thermostat's actually cool. It's a one-piece assembly that actually has the housing and the thermostat as one piece. Never had an issue with it. Same thing. So I'm going to stick with what works. There's 3 bolts that hang on to there. I bought the seal because I didn't know the seal came with it, so I ended up with an extra seal. So that's something to remember is that assembly comes with it. Now the pain in the butt hose here is the bottom one because it's covered, which means you're going to have to take all these damn clips off to get to that. And once they are, you can kind of give a better look at it, but like you can see the hose is really in a tight spot there. That wasn't easy to get out. Obviously I didn't video it because I'm by myself, and I apologize, but you just want to make sure everything goes back on the way it came off. So I've already got the hoses pretty much ready to go. Remember, everything goes on loose until you're ready. So even before, you need to get the other side of the hose on and everything before you start tightening stuff up because you can end up in a world of pain if something's wrong and then you have to take it all apart again, especially seals. You don't want it, once a seal is set, you don't want to have to pull it off again. So just make sure everything's guided properly. All the hoses are going where they're supposed to be going. And just keep working around in a circle when you tighten that up, just so it has even pressure across. So there, I'm just working it around. And going to use my little torque wrench. This was the same amount of torque that was needed for the water pump. And I can't remember for the life of me what it is. But like I said, I'll pop it up here in a subtitle once I remember what that was. So, all right. So I reused the hose clamps. There was nothing wrong with them. And they worked fine, and I really hate the other type of hose clamps, but to each their own. I mean, you're more than welcome to do it any way you want, but if there's no damage to it, I could see this. I mean, I live in California, so we don't get corrosion, but if you live in the Midwest or places where they use salt, I can totally understand replacing them because they're more than likely going to be rusted or some kind of corrosion. If you notice corrosion, obviously you want to replace them, but in my case, they're fine. There was nothing wrong with them. And you just got to sit there and mess with it to get it to release, which means you have to hold it with the pliers once it's lined up and then get it to release. As you can see, they open and lock. There's special pliers you can use to use these, but they're not cheap and I don't need them that bad. So as you can see, I'm just going to mess with this until I get it to release. And I believe that's wrong. Yep. See, I'm going to move that back. You make sure your hose clamp's in the right spot. Always, if you have to take it back apart, you have to take it back apart. But don't put that hose clamp in the wrong spot because you don't want to leak. So continuing on, still checking. I think same thing. Making sure that it's not too far in, not too far out. That we're not going to develop a leak because I did this wrong. As you can see, Honda's really nice, and they put these little dots which line up with the little lines that tell you that the hose is in the right direction. So that's always good to double check. Make sure that everything lines up and your hoses are put on properly and not bent. Same thing here to the thermostat hose. See, it's a little off, but it ain't going to be the end of the world. The bottom one, which is the nightmare one, same thing, has a marker on it. And I can't even think you can see it because it's covered by that harness. Be careful with that wire right there too. I've moved it out of the way because you can really easily damage that. This is me replacing the reservoir line. You don't need to do this. I just chose to do it because it was rubbing on the metal a little bit and I didn't want to end up with a hole in it. So decided to just go ahead and replace it, which you can tell from here wasn't as easy as I was planning on it being. It was very difficult to say the least. So I didn't want to cut it with a utility knife in that one, but at the same time I didn't want to break the cap. So there it goes. Put it on there. I cleaned out the reservoir while I had it off. That just slides on and off. There's no bolts holding that on. So just give you a heads up on that. You just literally pull it up and pop it out of there. Okay, so there's my Honda antifreeze. Of course, it's over a gallon, and then their stuff comes pre-diluted, and it's not cheap. But at the same time, you don't have to use any other type. You don't have to worry about it again. I think that's actually worth it, and by itself is not having to do this every 100,000 miles. You can wait much longer, if depending on how you drive the car. Cars that don't get warmed up on a regular basis or not driven freeway miles will need this work done more often. Cars like this one that I'm driving, which is all highway, you can really wait longer to do the fluid exchanges depending on the condition of the fluid and everything. You can have your fluid tested very easily. Mine even now was tested and it was still fine. The impurities are what damages the system, so you don't want anything to cause corrosion or anything like that. That's why you swap the fluids out. But in this case, I didn't really need to, but it's preventive maintenance. We're not doing maintenance here to extend, to fix a problem. We're doing it to extend the life without having a problem, because eventually that seal will fail on the water pump, or one of those hoses will fail. So let's catch it before. I've already gone much longer than I technically should have based on the manual, but at the same time, if it's not broken, don't fix it. I had an alternator go bad, so might as well do this work now. Always continually go back through everything. Right now I'm just making sure the lines are primed. It filled up pretty fast too, and to jump forward in my head, it didn't really need burp at all. It actually filled right up, which was nice. It didn't need to be purged. So now I'm putting putting the alternator back on, which actually took a little more work than I was expecting, because that gap that's there was a little weird on the old one versus the new one. This is a manual transmission car. I actually put an automatic transmission alternator on here, which actually will charge that battery more. It won't hurt it, but it's hard to find a manual transmission alternator, so it just has more ampage is all. It's going to push the battery. I could technically upgrade the battery if I wanted to the one that's on the automatic as well. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten it up. I don't torque it down here. I just make it tight. Don't over tighten it, just tight. It works. I mean, it's mechanics feel here. If you want to go crazy, get a torque wrench in there, but I don't. So, all right. So I'm getting the bottom bolt on, and that's now done. And now I'm going to put the tensioner on. I had a new tensioner, but this tensioner was still in good condition, so I'm going to leave it on there until I absolutely have to replace it, because they're not cheap. Tensioner is about $80 to $100. Same thing. I used an OEM part, replaced it, and I haven't had any problems with it. There are aftermarket ones, but the price really isn't that much different than just buying it from an online retailer that sells Honda parts. It's pretty dang close. So if I can buy a Honda part, I'm going to buy the Honda part. They seem to last longer. Okay, so that's back on there. What am I doing now? I think I'm putting the belt back on. It looks like, no. Yeah, I'm trying to get the belt back on. As you can see, I did this over several days, so this took some finagling. Working at night and during the day. It was really hot during the day, so obviously I can only do so much work. I'm putting the bottom bolt on the tensioner. That's what I'm doing. And then the second one, you can see I already left the hex bolt socket inside the bolt itself, so it's ready to go and I can tighten it. This is a feel thing. You kind of have to wiggle it around a little bit to kind of get it in there. It's not super difficult, but like I said, it's as hard as you want it to be. That is a special ratchet I have there. It's in my other video as well. When you twist the top, you can actually twisting the top will turn the bolt in, which really helps in this case when you're in a really tight position like that. But once you're done, you want to go ahead and torque everything down properly. And like I said, I should have a link. I might put it in here twice on doing that tensioner. It was just, at the time I was really I was against the clock. I have to go to work tomorrow, so I have to get this finished. I can't get super close angles or anything like that, and I apologize. All right, so I'm walking the belt back on. As you can see, I took the reservoir out and stuck it off to the side so I can get better my hands in there a little better to get the belt in there. It's original belt still. Not original, but the belt that was on there before I started. The belt was replaced like 110,000 or so. So it has a little life left in it. Okay, so it looks like now I'm tightening up the bolt, the nut on the top that holds the power line onto the alternator, and now I'm plugging all the little connectors back in, tracking them all the way back down to the AC compressor. That part's pretty easy, pretty straightforward. Just make sure to take those clips off. You saw those clips I was showing you. A pair of needles, pliers, and just walk them off. Okay, so I'm putting back on the battery, and we're going to start it up. Hooray, it started. Everything looks good. Nothing crazy happening. My car has a tendency of dry starting. I know it makes a little bit of noise there, but that's the way my car's been for a long time. I don't know what it is. I use Honda filters and everything. It's just, that is the way it sounds when it starts. The mic on the iPhone that I'm capturing this with has a tendency of picking things up, making it sound worse than they are. It doesn't sound like that really in real life. You don't hear it like that. But like I said, it just hears like that. So as it starts, you want to check under the car, make sure that there's no leaks. You want to, obviously I'm testing the alternator to make sure that it's pushing over 13 volts, which it is, so that part's good. And now I'm just looking for leaks. I don't put the wheel on or anything like that until I know that everything's all clear, and then I'll put all those the splash guards back in and put the wheel back on, drive it around a little bit. You want to get the car fully warmed, then you want it to cool down, then you want to check the fluids right after. As you can see, there's no cap. The radiator cap is not on right now. The reason is because I'm watching it to make sure nothing weird is coming up through it. It shouldn't, but if you're working on a car you don't know, if it has a blown head gasket or anything, you'll find out real quick. So you just want to let it warm up a little bit, make sure there's no leaks. Once you verify nothing's leaking, go ahead and put the splash guards back on, wheel back on, jack the car up, get it off the jacks, go drive it around a little bit, listen, keep the radio off, listen to the engine. It'll tell you everything you need to know. If you have any questions, ask below. Hope this video was helpful, and I'll talk to you guys later.